Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, your life, and career. I'm Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. It's a beautiful fall week here in the Northeast with higher than expected temperatures for Halloween.
Yeah, we're looking at like 80 degrees, so everybody's got to go out with swimsuits and that kind of stuff on this year. So looking forward to it.
I know here in the Northeast, October's usually cool. I'm sure kids will love wearing their costumes without having to put a winter coat over it.
Yeah. Sounds like with the temperature, they're going to have to watch out for the chocolate melting.
Yeah. So we've got a special guest here this week, Vic Ballard. Vic, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
All right, you got a couple hours left. Well, I spent my entire career in HR. So half of it I was consulting. I started at Ernst & Young. So a lot of large projects with large companies like Boeing, J&J, Merck. And then I just thought I'd like to be one of those HR guys that I work with. So I spent the next 15 years as chief HR officer, half of which was with tech companies. And then the last 3 years was with director of HR for a billion-dollar civil engineering firm. So I'm a master certified trainer in behavioral interviewing, which I'm loving to talk to you about today. And I've also a certified executive coach. I've been coaching senior leaders for the last 10 years to achieve breakthrough results.
Fantastic. So can you tell our listeners, what is behavioral interviewing?
Well, it had its roots back in the 70s, and I worked for the company that actually created what's known as the STAR technique. So behavioral interviewing is a focus on behavior, specifically what people have done and the results they've achieved. And so Development Dimensions International came up with this filter called the STAR technique. So I trained hiring managers, ask candidates for specific situation or task, so that's the ST, the actions they took, and the results they achieved. So the STAR technique, we want to hire stars. So that was a filter that helped hiring managers understand where they really had a good example of what this candidate did, not how they would do it, not philosophy, not, that they read it in a book, but what did they actually do?
So it's really a way of getting to the core of a candidate's actions. It's what they've been doing in their career rather than just their job title and responsibilities.
Right. And often, you'll hear a lot of philosophy, a lot of what I would do, that or things that, like we did this. So you really don't know what they did and you don't know what actions and results they achieved. So yes, that's it.
Yeah, looking at the write-up that Eric sent me as far as the way that you do things. I mean, you have a lot of case studies, a couple in your resume here, talking about people who thought that they were perfect for the job, one person in particular, and she wasn't, and you coached her through the whole process, and it contained a whole lot of different things as far as what people were looking for. And if you could walk us through that, it ended up, which what I think is a lot of people's worst enemy is their own negative self-talk, and talks a lot about mindfulness towards the end. And Eric and I talk a lot about that too, but walk us through the process. Because I know that, you have people who are very confident on the outside. They know that themselves, that they're scared of speaking and so on and so forth, but nobody knows that until they tell you, and that kind of thing. So I'm sure you're working a lot to just pull the real them out of themselves during the process, because obviously if they do get the position, they're going to have to be the real selves anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed your podcast on the imposter syndrome, which is a lot of what Chip's talking about. During an interview, that's a challenge. You don't want to write a candidate off if that, if they're nervous, or if they really can't present themselves well. So it's really the job of the hiring manager. One of the case studies I think Chip's referring to was a woman who came to me from $1 billion consulting firm and had been passed over as partner. I write about this in my book, and happy to send the chapter out to your listeners, so we can talk about that at the end. So when I asked her, well, why didn't you make partners? She said, well, they told me that I lacked executive presence. I was like, well, what does that mean? She said, well, I don't know. They didn't tell me. And so as a coach, if I'm trying to coach someone, I got to know what the company expects of her to do differently. And so we actually co-created a model with the company around what executive presence looked like. And then it's a matter of pulling that out of her, watching some of the things she did, because executive presence is a competency that's made up of many other competencies, like gravitas, like charisma, for instance. So you've got to see them in action. So I did that. We talked a lot about imposter syndrome. It was an issue that kept bringing her down. She felt reluctant to speak up in meetings because she didn't think she had anything to say, or people will think she's stupid. So I had to help her kind of deal with that. And yes, indeed, I always talk about mindfulness with the people that I work with, teaching them how to breathe. We call it tactical breathing, how to relax yourself before the interview if you're especially nervous. And it turned out, I can't take all the credit, but the next cycle she got promoted to partner. A lot of her work, and I have a couple of those references on my site, where people have been very complimentary of the work that we did together.
Excellent. Yes, it sounds like, especially in this case, there was a lack of confidence going in, so she wasn't projecting what they called executive presence, and that was what she had to work on. And unfortunately, that's very common. People have sort of been trained to ignore their own accomplishments and, downplay them. But when you're going for an interview, when you're going to, try to sell yourself either for a new position or a promotion, it is very important that you own what you've done, good and bad, isn't it?
Well, yeah, not only own, but that you remember, by writing down star examples before you go into the interview, practicing them, with someone else or on Zoom, so that you can see how you project your responses, how confident you look, what your body language looks like. Zoom really helps us. So, I often will have them write an accomplishments list out, and then we'll pick, half a dozen or so that are most relative, and practice what their STAR techniques are. The other thing is AI has come into play quite a bit, and you talk to people, both client companies and candidates interviewing, to use ChatGPT to find out, well, what are the core competencies of this job that you're applying for? And then ask ChatGPT, what are typical behavioral questions that one might ask to get at that? And it's a great resource, whether you're looking for a job and interviewing, or whether you're looking to hire someone.
That's true. Yes, AI is becoming a much more common tool that people are using. And we've talked with several career counselors over the past few weeks talking about getting jobs. How do you take your clients and get them prepared? Let's say there isn't something in their company to be promoted to. How do you prepare them for finding something that's a better fit for them?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I think a lot of it is research. Find out, well, what is the ideal next step for you? What does it look like? And what are the job requirements for it? And then how do you compare to it? So are you, and then kind of getting into a reality check. If you're a director and you want to be CEO, well, that might not be a step that you can take right now, but maybe if you're a director, how can we get you to the VP position? And then what does the VP position require? And once we know that, then I can help coach them around how to get there. We'll co-create a roadmap, and does it mean leaving your company, or does it mean having honest conversations with your boss about your career path? So I say that's where we'd start.
Nice. So before somebody even considers a promotion, a new job, looking through the lens of behavioral interviewing, what should they be doing in their current job to prepare for that possibility?
Well, it's kind of, and I've read thousands of resumes, and most people don't project problem solution in resumes. So it's understanding the problems you solved and projecting that to where you want to go. So it's really journaling. I would recommend journaling your accomplishments. What have you done? And think of what you've done in the STAR model, and kind of keeping a journal. Well, I did this and I worked with that team, and it was really complex because of this, and this is what we accomplished. And so I would start there.
So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? For someone who's trying to get their job done, but keeping their options open, you said journaling their successes, keeping track of what they're actually doing, but how does it affect not just keeping track of what they're doing, but the attitude that they're taking towards their current work?
Well, I think that relates to, who they are in their hearts. Who are you who are you, and why are you doing this job and this task, and who is benefiting from what you're doing? So really getting to know all of that. and asking yourself that several times, over, a month or two.
So it's very important for people to understand what their purpose is, or as we talk about very frequently on this podcast, knowing your why.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, some interviewers may even ask that, well, tell me what your why is. So they've got to be familiar with that term and understand what it means and practice explaining that. My why, my passion is helping senior leaders accomplish breakthrough results. And so a lot of that is helping them first kind of understand where they are and where they're going, and how they can really 10x their ability to produce results, and what's getting in the way. And that goes back to the imposter syndrome. So what are the gremlins in your head that are holding you back from accomplishing those results?
Yeah, and I'm sure you run into people who've been working for a while doing things, and all of a sudden they're coming to this crisis in their head saying, okay, I didn't get this, or I want to move on, and so on and so forth. And I would imagine that if you sit down with them and ask them what they think their why is, and if they really worked on themselves rather than just coasting in their jobs. I call it living in the land of Sameville, letting the outside world that you have no control over run your day-to-day life. But you can flip that switch anytime you want. And I'm sure that that's what you've had to do with these people. So I would imagine that folks listening to this podcast today, that's a huge message. I mean, you talk about journaling, and the best way to find out what your why is to basically write down the things that you're good at, the things that you like to do, and so on and so forth. The internet is your friend. Go on and research a lot of different things so you have that idea in you, so that whether you want to move on or not, you have that going for you, and you're looking to do something worthwhile. So I'm sure that you coach people through doing that. But for those of you people out here who are not doing that, it's probably a good practice to get into.
Right. Yeah. Just asking yourself, what am I passionate about? And you can tell when you're interviewing someone, when you hit something and they get all really energized. And so that's their why. That's what they're passionate about doing. And so then it's, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about how you were able to conceive the problem and how you were able to accomplish the result you did. And then, that is your why. That's what you're passionate about. And if you don't see that in your current job often enough, then, look to the outside if you have to.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to realize that finding your why, the journaling exercises, keeping track of your achievements, if you start to do this when you've decided you want a promotion or you want a new job, that's too late already. You should be doing this in your everyday life in preparation for the next step in your career path.
Right. Exactly. It's too late, when you're up for that promotion and you're interviewing with a committee, or like in consulting, there's a selection committee. That's definitely too late. You need time to really think it through, practice it, and really understand, what gets you up in the morning that you're excited about. And certainly you need to do that starting today. Let's start today and commit to doing that.
Yeah, and I'm sure whoever's interviewing them too, they will see that in the person that they are interviewing, that they have done that. And that's going to go, you talked about behavioral interviewing. If they see that in the person, that they're progressive and proactive with themselves in doing that and trying to figure this thing out ahead of time, subconsciously, these are intangibles that they're looking for in the people that they're hiring. If they are really taking initiatives themselves, they're going to take initiatives in their jobs too.
Right. Yeah, it's funny, all the people that I interviewed, about 10%, when I asked them, do you have any questions for me? They indeed do, and they pull out a list because they thought it through and they looked at the website. They know my company. Yeah, I understand that your company productivity took a dip, 2 years ago. How are you overcoming that? As opposed to the 90% when you say, do you have any questions for me? And they said, no, I don't. Not very passionate or energetic.
Yeah, it is very important to understand who you're interviewing with, and to know what's going on in the company you're talking to. I had an experience years ago. This wasn't a job interview, it was a client meeting. But I was going along to this client meeting. I had no client contact, didn't know who these folks were. And we get together, and I happened to mention I had seen in the paper that they had just gotten a new medication approval in South America. And, what were they planning to do with that? Just the fact that I knew that blew them away. So it really is, an extra arrow in your quiver to be able to say, yes, I understand what the company is doing, and this is how I can help.
Sure. And, LinkedIn is our friend. So if you're interviewing with a company, go to the LinkedIn page, see who you're interviewing with, as you said, Eric. Understand their background, and you might find out that they worked for EY, like I did years ago. So we know a lot of people. Or you might find out that they went to UCLA like I did, So you say, hey, I noticed, Eric, that you went to UCLA. Are you part of the Alumni Association? We got a big thing going. So yeah, it definitely gets the conversation off on a great start and demonstrates initiative, which is a core competency of many positions.
And that really is key, because most people take a very passive approach to being interviewed and the job search as a whole. And, while that might have worked, 40, 50 years ago, now that's out the window. You have to show that, yes, you're not just looking for a job, you're looking for that job.
Right. Yeah. And, again, how many times have you interviewed someone and say, why are you interested in our company? And they kind of don't have an answer. They've done no research. Again, initiative is critical in almost all jobs. So we want to see that they've demonstrated that, and they're interested enough to have done their research, done their homework. It's not just if you want just another job, okay, then don't worry about anything that we've talked about today.
So what else we talked about how someone can prepare for a new position. Other than researching the company, what does somebody need to be prepared for on the day of the interview?
Well, like I said, I always use ChatGPT to prepare for key behavioral questions. So, for instance, if I were, interviewing for an accounting manager's position, I might ask ChatGPT what are the core competencies, and one of them might be, say, business acumen. And one of the behavioral questions that they came up with was describe a time when you use your understanding of the industry to solve a business problem that we might also have. So you're looking, so as a candidate, I want to be prepared for that question, even if they don't ask. One of the tips I often will tell candidates: if you don't want to answer a question, answer another question and say, well, if you're looking for, let's say they asked about project planning, and well, if you're looking for well, that sounds like business acumen to me. and then you go and give an example of that. So you got, well, if you're looking for this, let me tell you about that. So the trick is candidates want to be in control, and hiring managers really need to be in control. So they have to be skilled at redirecting candidate. Well, no, that's not what I was looking for. Tell me more about this. Or, drilling down into the STAR technique. And that's what is critical on both sides, planning, practice. The other thing is that I don't know if you've ever seen companies use a panel of interviewers because they can never get them all in the office at the same time. So you have 5 or 6 people, and they're asking, they're not prepared. They're asking questions that are irrelevant, or they're stepping on the toes of other people, asking questions already asked. So I've had to prepare panels with specific questions. Okay, you asked this question, and you asked this question, and don't stray from the script. And don't ask questions that are not job related. I've worked for a $1 billion firm, and I had hiring managers ask women, well, when do you plan to have children? Because I think, oh, well, women, they get pregnant, then they go on leave. I've got to have them on the job. Well, you can't ask that question, or
that's actually an illegal question at this point.
Or they might say, gee, Vic, you look like you're in your 70s, you're not going to work for much longer. So the assumption is that older people have less time on their horizon to work. The truth is younger people change jobs more often. So older people are probably better, longer lasters, on the job than young people. Young people tend to build a portfolio. They'll work for my company to get this skill set, and then they'll move on and work for Chip's company to get that skill set, and then they'll work for Eric, So they're, maybe it's every 2 years because they're building a portfolio.
So that actually brings up a good point. Years ago, if you jumped around from job to job every 2 years or so, it was a strike against you. That's no longer the case, is it?
Absolutely. It's not what's out there in the real world. Nobody spends, like my father did, 40 years working for the same company. Nobody does that. I'm a boomer. I never did that. I didn't jump every 2 years. But, I've got to train hiring managers to not just discount people. If it's every 2 years, find out what the rationale was about their movement. So what prompted you to move to this company from that company? And you want to hear that, well, they there was no job ladder. There was no future in that particular job, but I did develop this particular skill. So you want to hear that, but you can't just discount them if they did move around frequently in today's world.
All right, we are just about at the end of our time. So Vic, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to use your services, how can they do so?
Well, they can go to my website, which is coreenergycoaching.com. So that's core-energy-coaching.com. And I'm all about energy. And you'll see on my website, talk about what core energy coaching is. They can also get a copy of my book by filling out a form and give me their email address. I'll be happy to send it to them.
All right, great. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Well, I love hearing about the process from somebody who's just basically been working for myself all these years, but have done a lot of consulting and run into a lot of people. It's great. But when you're dealing with people, I tell everybody, look in the mirror and realize that you are Me Inc. You are your own company, whether you're working for yourself or whether you're working for somebody else. And it all starts with your preparation, finding your purpose, your passion, and your why, and journaling everything down. If you have that up front, maybe you won't run into problems in the first place because you'll be happy doing whatever you're doing, but it's going to help you in whatever you're doing moving ahead. So it's really, really important to just be prepared for whatever situation that you're in and just make it happen. As you said, just take charge. You are in charge and you have the tools to help people through that whole process. So thank you for this has been a wonderful interview.
My pleasure.
Yes, I think for me, the big takeaway is the effort you need to put in. You need to figure out what your why is and where you want to go with it. And the sooner you do that, the more prepared you'll be. I don't remember who said it, but it's luck is what happens when opportunity meets preparation. And you need to spend time with that preparation, making sure you're ready when these opportunities show up, whether it's a promotion in your own company, starting your own business, or moving on to another company. Whatever it is, you need to be prepared to take advantage of that opportunity when it presents itself. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.